It is told that Beren passed through Doriath unhindered and came at length to the region of the Twilight Meres and the fence of Sirion, and leaving Thingol's land, he climbed the hills above the falls of Sirion, where the river plunged underground with great noise. Thence he looked westward, and through the mist and rains that lay upon those hills, he saw Talath Dirnen, the guarded plain, stretching between Sirion and Narok, and beyond he descried afar the highlands of Tol-in-Gaurhoth that rose above Nargothrond. And being destitute, without hope or counsel, he turned his feet thither. Upon all that plain the elves of Nargothrond kept unceasing watch, and every hill upon its borders was crowned with hidden towers, and through all its woods and fields archers ranged secretly and with great craft. Their arrows were sure and deadly, and nothing crept there against their will. Therefore, ere Beren had come far upon his road, they were aware of him, and his death was nigh. But knowing his danger, he held ever aloft the ring of Felagund, and though he saw no living thing because of the stealth of the hunters, he felt that he was watched, and cried often aloud, "I am Beren, son of Barahir, friend of Felagund. Take me to the king." Therefore the hunters slew him not, but assembling they waylaid him and commanded him to halt. But seeing the ring, they bowed before him, though he was in evil plight, wild and wayworn, and they led him northward and westward, going by night, lest their paths should be revealed. For at that time there was no ford or bridge over the torrent of Narok before the gates of Nargothrond, but further to the north, where Ginglith joined Narok, the flood was less, and crossing there, and turning again southward, the elves led Beren under the light of the moon to the dark gates of their hidden halls. Thus Beren came before King Finrod Felagund, and Felagund knew him, needing no ring to remind him of the kin of Beor and of Barahir. Behind closed doors they sat, and Beren told of the death of Barahir, and of all that had befallen him in Doriath, and he wept, recalling Luthien and their joy together. But Felagund heard his tale in wonder and disquiet, and he knew that the oath he had sworn was come upon him for his death, as long before he had foretold to Galadriel. He spoke then to Beren in heaviness of heart. "It is plain that Thingol desires your death, but it seems that this doom goes beyond his purpose, and that the Oath of Feanor is again at work. For the Silmarils are cursed with an oath of hatred, and he that even names them in desire moves a great power from slumber, and the sons of Feanor would lay all the elf kingdoms in ruin rather than suffer any other than themselves to win or possess a Silmaril. For the oath drives them. And now Celegorm and Curufin are dwelling in my halls, and though I, Finafin's son, am king, they have won a strong power in the realm and lead many of their own people. They have shown friendship to me in every need, but I fear that they will show neither love nor mercy to you if your quest be told. Yet my own oath holds, and thus we are all ensnared. Then King Filigund spoke before his people, recalling the deeds of Barahir and his vow, and he declared that it was laid upon him to aid the son of Barahir in his need, and he sought the help of his chieftains. Then Celegorm arose amid the throng, and drawing his sword, he cried, "Be he friend or foe, whether demon of Morgoth or elf, or child of men, or any other living thing in Ada, neither law, nor love, no league of hell, nor might of the Vala, nor any power of wizardry shall defend him from the pursuing hate of Feanor's sons, if he take or find a Silmaril and keep it. For the Silmarils we alone claim until the world ends." Many other words he spoke, as potent as were long before in Tirion the words of his father that first inflamed the Noldor to rebellion. And after Celegorm, Curufin spoke, more softly, but with no less power, conjuring in the minds of the elves a vision of war and the ruin of Nargothrond. So great a fear did he set in their hearts that never after, until the time of Turin, would any elf of that realm go into open battle, but with stealth and ambush, with wizardry and venomed dart, they pursued all strangers, forgetting the bonds of kinship. Thus they fell from the valor and freedom of the elves of old, and their land was darkened. And now they murmured that Finafin's son was not as a Vala to command them, and they turned their faces from him. But the curse of Mandos came upon the brothers, and dark thoughts arose in their hearts thinking to send forth Filigund alone to his death, and to usurp, it might be, the throne of Nargothrond, for they were of the eldest line of the princes of the Noldor. And Filigund, seeing that he was forsaken, took from his head the silver crown of Nargothrond and cast it at his feet, saying, "Your oaths of faith to me you may break, but I must hold my bond. Yet if there be any on whom the shadow of our curse has not yet fallen, I should find at least a few to follow me, and should not go hence as a beggar that is thrust from the gates." There were 10 that stood by him, and the chief of them, who was named Idrahil, stooping, lifted the crown and asked that it be given to a steward until Filigund's return. "For you remain my king, and theirs," he said, "whatever betide." Then Filigund gave the crown of Nargothrond to Orodreth, his brother, to govern in his stead, and Kiligorm and Curufin said nothing, but they smiled and went from the halls. On an evening of autumn, Filigund and Beren set out from Nargothrond with their 10 companions, and they journeyed beside Narok to his source in the falls of Ivrin. Beneath the shadowy mountains they came upon a company of orcs and slew them all in their camp by night, and they took their gear and their weapons. By the arts of Filigund, their own forms and faces were changed into the likeness of orcs, and thus disguised they came far upon their northward road and ventured into the western pass between Ered-Wethrin and the highlands of Taur-nu-Fuin. But Sauron, in his tower, was ware of them, and doubt took him, for they went in haste, and stayed not to report their deeds, as was commanded to all the servants of Morgoth that passed that way. Therefore he sent to waylay them, and bring them before him. Thus befell the contest of Sauron and Filigund, which is renowned, for Filigund strove with Sauron in songs of power, and the power of the king was very great. But Sauron had the mastery, as is told in the Lay of Lúthien. He chanted a song of wizardry, of piercing, opening, of treachery, revealing, uncovering, betraying. Then sudden Filigund there swaying, sang in answer a song of staying, resisting, battling against power, of secrets kept, strength like a tower, and trust unbroken, freedom escape, of changing and of shifting shape, of snares eluded, broken traps, the prison opening, the chain that snaps, backwards and forwards swaying their song, reeling and foundering as ever more strong. The chanting swelled, Finrod fought, and all the magic and might he brought of elvenness into his words. Softly in the gloom they heard the birds singing afar in Nargothrond, the sighing of the sea beyond. Beyond the western world, on sand of pearls in Elvenland. Then the gloom gathered, darkness growing, in Valinor, the red blood flowing, beside the sea where the Noldor slew the foam riders, and stealing drew their wide ships with their wide sails from lamplit havens. The wind wails, the wolf howls, the ravens flee. The ice mutters in the mouths of the sea, the captives sad in Angband mourn, thunder rumbles, the fires burn, and Finrod fell before the throne. Then Sauron stripped them their disguise, and they stood before him, naked and afraid. But though their kinds were revealed, Sauron could not discover their names or their purposes. He cast them therefore into a deep pit, dark and silent, and threatened to slay them cruelly, unless one would betray the truth to him. From time to time they saw two eyes kindled in the dark, and a werewolf devoured one of the companions, but none betrayed their lord. In the time when Sauron cast Beren into the pit, a weight of horror came upon Lúthien's heart, and going to Melian for counsel, she learned that Beren lay in the dungeons of Tol-in-Gaurhoth without hope of rescue. Then Luthien, perceiving that no help would come from any other on earth, resolved to fly from Doriath and come herself to him. But she sought the aid of Daeron, and he betrayed her purpose to the king. Then Thingol was filled with fear and wonder, and because he would not deprive Luthien of the lights of heaven, lest she fail and fade, and yet would restrain her, he caused a house to be built from which she should not escape. Not far from the gates of Menegroth stood the greatest of all the trees in the forest of Neldoreth. Far aloft in the shafts of Hirilorn a wooden house was built, and there Luthien was made to dwell, and the ladders were taken away and guarded, save only when the servants of Thingol brought her such things as she needed. It is told how she escaped from the house in Hirilorn, for she put forth her arts of enchantment and caused her hair to grow to great length, and of it she wove a dark robe that wrapped her beauty like a shadow, and it was laden with a spell of sleep. Of the strands that remained, she twined a rope, and she let it down from her window. And as the end swayed above the guards that sat beneath the tree, they fell into a deep slumber. Then Lúthien climbed from her prison, and shrouded in her shadowy cloak, she escaped from all eyes and vanished out of Doriath. It chanced that Celegorm and Curufin went on a hunt through the guarded plain, and this they did because Sauron, being filled with suspicion, sent forth many wolves into the Elflands. Therefore they took their hounds and rode forth, and they thought that ere they returned they might also hear tidings concerning King Filegund. Now the chief of the wolf-hounds that followed Celegorm was named Huan. He was not born in Middle-earth, but came from the Blessed Realm, for Orome had given him to Celegorm long ago in Valinor, and there he had followed the horn of his master before evil came. Huan followed Celegorm into exile and was faithful, and thus he too came under the doom of woe set upon the Noldor, and it was decreed that he should meet death, but not until he encountered the mightiest wolf that would ever walk the world. Huan it was that found Lúthien flying like a shadow, surprised by the daylight under the trees. When Celegorm and Curufin rested a while near to the western eaves of Doriath, for nothing could escape the sight and scent of Huan, nor could any enchantment stay him, and he slept not, neither by night nor day. He brought her to Celegorm, and Lúthien, learning that he was a prince of the Noldor and a foe of Morgoth, was glad, and she declared herself, casting aside her cloak. So great was her sudden beauty revealed beneath the sun that Celegorm became enamoured of her, but he spoke her fair and promised that she would find help in her need if she returned with him now to Nargothrond. By no sign did he reveal that he knew already of Beren and the quest of which she told, nor that it was a matter which touched him near. Thus they broke off the hunt and returned to Nargothrond, and Lúthien was betrayed, for they held her fast and took away her cloak, as she was not permitted to pass the gates or to speak with any save the brothers Celegorm and Curufin. For now, believing that Beren and Filegund were prisoners beyond hope of aid, they purposed to let the king perish and to keep Lúthien, and force Thingol to give her hand to Celegorm. Thus they would advance their power and become the mightiest of the princes of the Noldor. and they did not purpose to seek the Silmarils by craft or war, or to suffer any others to do so, until they had all the might of the elf kingdoms under their hands. Orodreth had no power to withstand them, for they swayed the hearts of the people of Nargothrond, and Kilegorm sent messengers to Thingol, urging his suit. But Huan, the hound, was true of heart, and the love of Luthien had fallen upon him in the first hour of their meeting, and he grieved at her captivity. Therefore he came often to her chamber, and at night he lay before her door, for he felt that evil had come to Nargothrond. Luthien spoke often to Huan in her loneliness, telling of Beren, who was the friend of all birds and beasts that did not serve Morgoth, and Huan understood all that was said. For he comprehended the speech of all things with voice, but it was permitted to him thrice only ere his death to speak with words. Now Huan devised a plan for the aid of Luthien, and coming at a time of night, he brought her cloak, and for the first time he spoke, giving her counsel. Then he led her by secret ways out of Nargothrond, and they fled north together, and he humbled his pride, and suffered her to ride upon him in the fashion of a steed, even as the orcs did at times upon great wolves. Thus they made great speed, for Huan was swift and tireless. In the pits of Sauron, Beren and Filigund lay, and all their companions were now dead. But Sauron purposed to keep Filigund to the last, for he perceived that he was a Noldo of great might and wisdom, and he deemed that in him lay the secret of their errand. But when the wolf came for Beren, Filigund put forth all his power and burst his bonds, and he wrestled with the werewolf and slew it with his hands and teeth. Yet he himself was wounded to the death. Then he spoke to Beren, saying, I go now to my long rest in the timeless halls beyond the seas and the mountains of Aman. It will be long ere I am seen among the Noldor again, and it may be that we shall not meet a second time in death or life, for the fates of our kindreds are apart. Farewell. He died then in the dark, in Tol-in-Gaurhoth, whose great tower he himself had built. Thus King Finrod Filigund, fairest and most beloved of the house of Finwë, redeemed his oath. But Beren mourned beside him in despair. In that hour Luthien came, and standing upon the bridge that led to Sauron's isle, she sang a song that no walls of stone could hinder. Beren heard, and he thought that he dreamed, for the stars shone above him, and in the trees nightingales were singing. And in answer he sang a song of challenge that he had made in praise of the 7 stars, the sickle of the Vala that Vada hung above the north as a sign for the fall of Morgoth. Then all strength left him, and he fell down into darkness. But Lúthien heard his answering voice, and she sang then a song of great power. The wolves howled, and the isle trembled. Sauron stood in the high tower, wrapped in his black thought, but he smiled hearing her voice, for he knew that it was the daughter of Melian. The fame of the beauty of Luthien and the wonder of her song had long gone forth from Duriath, and he thought to make her captive and hand her over to the power of Morgoth, for his reward would be great. Therefore he sent a wolf to the bridge, but Huan slew it silently. Still, Sauron sent others, one by one, and one by one Huan took them by the throat and slew them. But then Sauron sent Draugluin, a dread beast, old and evil, lord and sire of the werewolves of Angband. His might was great, and the battle of Huan and Draugluin was long and fierce. Yet at length Draugluin escaped, and fleeing back into the tower, he died before Sauron's feet. And as he died, he told his master, Now Sauron knew well, as did all in that land, that fate that was decreed for the hound of Valinor, and it came into his thought that he himself would accomplish it. Therefore he took upon himself the form of a werewolf, and made himself the mightiest that had yet walked the world. And he came forth to win the passage of the bridge. So great was the horror of his approach that Huan leaped aside. Then Sauron sprang upon Lúthien, and she swooned before the menace of the fell spirit in his eyes and the foul vapor of his breath. But even as he came, falling, she cast a fold of her dark cloak before his eyes, and he stumbled, for a fleeting drowsiness came upon him. Then Huan sprang. There befell the battle of Huan and wolf Sauron, and the howls and baying echoed in the hills, and the watchers on the walls of Eredwethrin across the valley heard it afar and were dismayed. but no wizardry nor spell, neither fang nor venom, nor devil's art, nor beast strength could overthrow Huan of Valinor. And he took his foe by the throat and pinned him down. Then Sauron shifted shape from wolf to serpent, and from monster to his own accustomed form. But he could not elude the grip of Huan without forsaking his body utterly. Ere his foul spirit left its dark house, Luthien came to him and said that he should be stripped of his raiment of flesh, and his ghost be sent quaking back to Morgoth, and she said, "There everlastingly thy naked self shall endure the torment of his scorn, pierced by his eyes, unless thou yield to me the mastery of thy tower." Then Sauron yielded himself, and Luthien took the mastery of the isle and all that was there, and Huan released him. And immediately he took the form of a vampire, great as a dark cloud across the moon, and he fled, dripping blood from his throat upon the trees, and came to Tol-in-Gaurhoth and dwelt there, filling it with horror. Then Luthien stood upon the bridge and declared her power, and the spell was loosed that bound stone to stone, and the gates were thrown down, and the walls opened, and the pits laid bare, and many thralls and captives came forth in wonder and dismay, shielding their eyes against the pale moonlight, for they had lain long in the darkness of Sauron. But Beren came not. Therefore Huan and Luthien sought him in the isle, and Luthien found him mourning by Filigund. So deep was his anguish that he lay still and did not hear her feet. Then, thinking him already dead, she put her arms about him and fell into a dark forgetfulness. But Beren, coming back to the light out of the pits of despair, lifted her up, and they looked again upon one another, and the day rising over the dark hills shone upon them. They buried the body of Filigund upon the hilltop of his own isle, and it was clean again, and the green grave of Finrod, Finafin's son, fairest of all the princes of the elves, remained inviolate until the land was changed and broken and foundered under destroying seas. But Finrod walks with Finafin, his father, beneath the trees in Eldamar.